Someone is going to say something to you today that's designed to knock you off balance. Maybe they already have. A comment that stings, a challenge you didn't see coming, a moment where your mind went blank and hours later, in the shower, you finally thought of what you should have said. The Stoics had a name for that feeling. They called it being conquered without a sword. Tonight, I'm giving you 7 responses so calm, so precise, so philosophically loaded that they won't just answer the person in front of you, they'll silence the noise inside you. But I need to warn you about something first. The first response is easy. By the 7th, most people can't say it and mean it. That's not a flaw in the list. That's the point. Stay with me. Epictetus was born a slave. His master broke his leg as a demonstration of power. If anyone had the right to believe words and circumstances could destroy a person, it was him. Instead, he wrote this in his discourses: "Men are disturbed not by the things which happen, but by the opinions about the things." Read that again. Not the thing, your opinion of the thing. That's not a motivational slogan. It's a claim about the architecture of human suffering. The insult someone throws at you is a neutral event. What makes your face flush, your hands shake, your sleep disappear is the story you build around it in the half-second after it lands. Marcus Aurelius put it plainer, writing only to himself in a journal he never meant for anyone to read. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. The Stoics weren't saying cruelty doesn't matter. Seneca wrote whole letters about the wounds language leaves. What they were saying is that the wound and your response to the wound are 2 separate events, and only one of them is yours to control. Everything that follows is built on that line. Response 1. I may be wrong. 3 words. Your instinct says this is weakness. The Stoics said the opposite. Marcus Aurelius, emperor of Rome, commander of legions, the most powerful man alive, wrote, "If someone can show me that what I think or do is not right, I will happily change." That's not performed humility. That's the recognition that perception is always partial, always filtered through ego. Here's why it works as a weapon of de-escalation. The person attacking you wants your ego on the table, because an ego fighting to protect itself is predictable. Say, "I may be wrong," and genuinely mean it, and you take the target away. There's an account of a student confronting Epictetus, accusing him loudly of inconsistency. Epictetus just smiled. "You may have found an error I haven't. Tell me more." The argument had nothing left to push against. Picture the scenario plainly. Someone in a meeting flatly tells you your plan is flawed in front of people whose opinion of you matters. The old script says defend it, fast, before the silence makes you look caught out. The Stoic script says pause and ask internally before anything else, could they be right? Not as defeat, as philosophy. That single question asked honestly is the whole discipline in miniature. This one is the entry point. It costs you almost nothing, your ego, briefly, and nothing else. The next one costs more. Response 2. Silence. Seneca told his friend Lucilius to retire into himself, to keep company with people worth improving and avoid people who groan over everything. And his method of avoidance wasn't argument, it was withdrawal. When someone provokes you, they're usually after an energy transaction. Your fear, your scrambling, your anger. That's the fuel. Silence starves it. Not cold silence, not sulking silence, stoic silence. The kind that comes from someone who heard what was said, weighed it, and found it not worth a response. Marcus called this watchfulness, prosoche, the habit of asking before you speak, does this moment need my voice or just my presence? As emperor, he was surrounded by senators baiting him, generals testing him, and the record shows the same thing over and over. He paused. Often he never spoke at all. The ancient world had a word for it, megalosoukia,
greatness of soul, the ability to stay unmoved when lesser people expect movement. Respond instantly and you hand someone a map of exactly which buttons work. Stay silent and you reveal nothing.
Notice what's actually happening underneath this. Fake silence is just delayed reaction. You're still composing the rebuttal in your head, waiting for an opening. Stoic silence has nothing left to compose, because the question of whether to respond has already been answered. No. That's the difference between someone biting their tongue and someone who has genuinely decided the provocation doesn't deserve their voice. People can feel which one they're getting, even without a word said. Silence is easy to fake and almost impossible to sustain, which is why the next response demands something silence doesn't. You actually have to open the door. Response 3. That's an interesting perspective. This is where it gets harder, because now you're not just withholding, you're engaging without surrendering. Epictetus opens the Enchiridion with the line, "Everything else here is built on." Some things are in our control, others are not. This response is that line spoken out loud. It doesn't say you agree, it doesn't say you disagree. It says, "I've heard you, I've registered that your view exists, and I'm choosing, deliberately, not to make it my problem." The Stoics were fascinated by sympathia, the interconnectedness of things, but just as fascinated by its dark twin, how easily we absorb other people's certainty, their anxiety, their judgment as if it were our own. They called that absorption pathe. That's an interesting perspective, creates diastema, distance, a gap between the impression and your reaction. But here's the trap. This only works if you mean it. Say it while seething inside, and you've learned nothing. You've just performed Stoicism instead of practicing it. Marcus, surrounded daily by people whose politics and behavior he found genuinely wrong, still wrote, "I have seen the beauty of good and the ugliness of evil, and have recognized that the wrongdoer has a nature related to my own." He didn't tolerate wrongdoing, he stayed curious about how someone arrived at it. Try this with a family member at dinner the next time politics comes up. Not to win, just to stay genuinely curious about the path that got them there. Most arguments don't end because someone wins. They end when one person stops needing to. You've now gone from defending nothing, to withholding judgment, to actually staying present with someone's view without flinching. The next one asks you to slow down in a culture built to punish slowness. Response 4. Let me think about that. We live inside a machine that rewards instant reaction, comment sections, hot takes, the performance of never being caught off guard. The Stoics saw this same impulse 2,000 years before Twitter and called it hamartia, the missing of the mark. Seneca's whole practice of nightly review rested on one premise: time reveals what haste conceals. Let me think about that does 3 things at once. It protects logos, reason, from being overrun by impulse and ego speaking before reason has assembled itself. It signals a kind of respect most people aren't braced to receive when they expected a fight. And it buys you what Marcus called hypomone, patient endurance, the ability to sit in not having an answer yet without filling the silence with noise. There's a record from Cassius Dio of Marcus presiding over legal disputes, asking follow-up questions, requesting time, sleeping on rulings, while other emperors handed down fast, capricious verdicts. His contemporaries found it maddening. History sided with him. Imagine someone corners you with a question designed to box you in. So, are you saying it's my fault or not? Built to force an instant yes or no. Let me think about that refuses the box entirely. It doesn't dodge the question, it just declines to answer on someone else's timeline. Most people asking loaded questions are betting you won't have the nerve to slow down. Prove them wrong, and the entire shape of the exchange changes. This one is hardest not because the words are complicated, they're 4 words, but because it asks you to resist the instinct to prove you've already considered everything. That instinct is deeply human. It's also, the Stoics would say, deeply unhelpful. If silence, curiosity, and patience were difficult, the next one is where most people quietly tap out, because it asks you to mean something you've already decided you don't.
Response 5. You might be right. Notice what changed. Response 1 was inward, admitting your own fallibility to yourself. This is outward, genuine openness to someone else's position, said to their face. Zeno of Citium, who founded this whole school of thought, taught that the highest form of rational virtue wasn't winning an argument, it was arriving at truth. A philosopher who enters a debate hoping to win rather than hoping to learn has already failed, regardless of the outcome. You might be right doesn't mean capitulation. It doesn't mean agreement. It means I am holding your position open as a live possibility instead of treating it as a threat. Seneca wrote that the first step in becoming good is wanting to be good. The conversational version of that is wanting to be changed by the conversation. Walk in already decided, and you're not talking, you're performing, and the Stoics had no patience for philosophy dressed up as performance. Think about the last time someone actually changed your mind. I'd bet it wasn't the strength of their argument. It was the feeling that they respected you enough to want you to understand, not to defeat you. You might be right is how you give someone else that feeling in the middle of the hardest conversation you've had all year. Try saying it to someone mid-argument and watch what happens to their posture. The fight in them has nothing left to push against because you've stopped pushing back. By now, you've given up the ego, the reaction, the judgment, and the certainty. There's one thing left to give up, and it's the one most people never even realize they're holding, and it isn't even the hardest one. That's still coming. Response 6. This doesn't require my reaction. This is mostly internal, a half-second intervention before you say something you'll spend hours regretting. But said aloud, calmly, without drama, it carries weight precisely because it's so rarely offered. Epictetus kept returning to prohairesis, the faculty of choice, the will, the part of you that decides what to engage with and what to let pass. He called it the very essence of human freedom and put everything else, your health, your reputation, what people think of you, even your life, into a separate category, ta hecto, things outside your control. This doesn't require my reaction is prohairesis in action. It's the one freedom no one can take from you. Marcus balanced his sense of duty with this same restraint, returning constantly to the idea that what stands in the way can become the way, but not every obstacle is meant to be fought. Some are tests of whether you'll recognize them as not your battle at all. Picture a colleague dismissing your work in front of others. Your face is hot, your heart rate's up. Every instinct says defend, explain, push back. The Stoic asks one question instead. What's the best outcome in the next 60 seconds, and what's the best outcome in the next 60 days? Those answers are usually different, and the Stoic always plays the longer game. This isn't passivity, it's strategy raised to the level of philosophy. 6 months from now, nobody remembers who had the sharper comeback in that meeting. They remember who stayed steady. And now the last one, the one that requires no clever phrasing at all, just 4 words most people will never be able to say and mean.
Response 7. Thank you for telling me. Not because it's linguistically hard, because it requires the deepest grounding of anything on this list. In Meditations, Book 1, Marcus lists the people who shaped him and what each one taught him. Not the people who made his life easy, but the people who made him better, which are rarely the same people. That's amor fati, the love of fate, the embrace of what happens instead of resistance to it. Nietzsche later made the phrase famous, but the bones of it are Stoic. Thank you for telling me is amor fati spoken into a conversation. It's the recognition that criticism, even hostile, even unwelcome, carries information.
about how you're perceived, about the gap between your self-image and what you're actually projecting. The Stoics weren't sentimental about this. Epictetus was clear that you weigh feedback with reason, not swallow it whole. But he was just as clear that the instinct to dismiss feedback, to bristle at anyone who offers it, is one of the most reliable signs of a person who has stopped growing. Picture the moment this is actually hardest to use. Not a stranger's criticism, which is cheap to absorb, but someone close to you finally saying the thing they've been holding back for months. You've been hard to reach lately. You talk over people without noticing. There's no clever comeback available, because the comeback isn't the point anymore. The only honest move left is the one that costs the most. Thank you for telling me. And actually sitting with it afterward instead of building a case for why they're wrong. Seneca wrote that he reviewed each day before sleep, and that a day is only yours once you've gathered what it offered, including the uncomfortable parts, the parts that required saying thank you and meaning it. There's a version of you that never has to scramble for words again, not because you've memorized 7 clever lines, but because you've internalized something underneath all of them. You are not your reputation. You are not other people's opinions of you. You are not your worst moment. You are, as Marcus wrote to himself at the close of a long day running an empire, a soul governing a body. And from that position, nothing said to you can silence you, because you were never making noise in the first place. Notice what happened across these 7. You didn't move in a straight line of difficulty by accident. Each one asks you to surrender something a little harder to let go of than the last. First, your certainty about yourself. Then your need to respond at all. Then your judgment of someone else's view. Then your need for speed. Then your certainty about them. Then your reaction itself. And finally, gratitude for the very thing that hurt you. That's not 7 unrelated tricks. That's a single discipline practiced at increasing depth. 7 responses. Not tricks, not weapons, philosophical positions. Each one costing more than the last. I may be wrong. The courage to release your ego first. Silence, the discipline of withholding fuel. That's an interesting perspective. Staying present without absorbing. Let me think about that. Resisting speed for the sake of reason. You might be right. Opening your certainty to someone else's truth. This doesn't require my reaction. The freedom of strategic withdrawal. Thank you for telling me. The deepest discipline of all. Gratitude for the wound. None of these become yours by watching a video. They become yours through ascesis, discipline, training, the daily exercise of the muscle. Marcus didn't write Meditations because he'd mastered Stoicism. He wrote it because he was still practicing, every day, surrounded by war, plague, and loss, holding himself accountable to the man he was trying to become. That's worth sitting with for a second. The most powerful man in the ancient world still had to write himself daily reminders not to lose his temper, not to take the bait, not to mistake winning an argument for being right. If he needed the practice, the rest of us definitely do. So here's what I want you to do. Not someday, tomorrow. Pick one of these 7. Just one. Use it in the most ordinary moment you can find. Not a crisis, just a normal flash of the old urge to react fast, defend hard, win the exchange. Try the Stoic response instead. Then come back and tell me what happened. That's what this is for. Not learning Stoicism, living it.